This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Well, you know him as Mr. Wonderful. He's the star of Dragon's Den, the star of Shark Tank, and now Kevin O'Leary might be the biggest mover and shaker in Alberta real estate history, promising to be the driving force behind a $70 billion data center, the biggest real estate development in the province's history, just south of Grand Prairie. But here's the rub. Max Fawcett, who's about to join us in about 45 seconds, says that Mr. Wonderful is playing Alberta for a fool. You're going to find out why in this episode of Real Talk, which is proudly presented by Alberta's top online real estate school, which is Relo at relo.ca, where better real estate training starts. Real Estate by Relo is learning online for the bold and ambitious, and wherever you're at in your career, they're going to help you find the next level. If 2025 for you is going to be the year that you step outside of the cubicle, you shatter that glass ceiling in your workplace, and you start helping people buy or sell that perfect property, you're going to want to start online at relo.ca. You can learn more on their website about why they're the best choice, bar none. And we want to keep a few extra bucks in your pocket. Make sure you use the promo code Ryan100 when you get started. The Alberta commercial or the Alberta residential real estate bundles, you'll knock $100 off with that promo code Ryan100 when you get started today at relo.ca. All right, so it's...
There's a valley where technology and nature will come together in perfect harmony, where the future will pulse at every turn. Bursting with nature and wildlife, nurturing the present as it embraces the future. A valley where the brightest minds unite, where electrons, machines, and data come together in an algorithmic dance. Wonder, it's not just a name, it's a mission. A data center campus that will sustainably marshal in a new era of innovation. The single largest AI compute data center park on Earth. Nestled quietly within 7,000 acres of forest land with trails, wildlife and recreation, and beauty. Welcome to Wonder Valley. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow's a mystery. Let's shape the future together.
That's like one of the most soothing voices that I think I've ever heard.
Oh my God!
On a video narration. You get excited about it, and who wouldn't get excited about a $70 billion investment that could employ thousands of people in a region that's known for being a big part of driving the province's economy. This would be a natural gas fueled, at least in part, data center just south of Grand Prairie, maybe a half hour, 45 minutes drive. A data center that could be the envy of the world. Alberta's premier is excited. Why wouldn't she be? She's been working with Kevin O'Leary, easily one of the most recognizable business personalities in Canada. But here's the rub. Not everybody's convinced, including our guest today, Max Fawcett, lead columnist with Canada's National Observer, whose new column at nationalobserver.com asserts that Kevin O'Leary is playing Alberta for a $70 billion fool. Max, were you not sold by the narration on that video? The eagles cresting through and the buildings rising up out of the ground and the plants materializing out of nowhere? Why do you have to be a cynic about this?
Wow, it's kind of my upbringing and my profession now. But yeah, I was touched by the AI video, and if you look closely enough, there's some AI features in there, people with 3 arms, things like that. But I was raised to smell out BS, and this just gives off a very, very strong whiff of it, especially when you realize who's the driving force behind it, Kevin O'Leary, who is a very talented salesperson. Very talented. We've seen that in his television career. We've seen that in some respects in his financial career. But when it comes to actually building things, the end product being a success, his track record is basically zero. it is a wildly unimpressive record of delivering on the things that he has promised with his business ventures. And this just strikes me as more of the same. He is trying to capitalize on a frenzy right now out there about artificial intelligence, about data centers. You see it everywhere. You see it in the valuations of tech companies that are involved in AI. It is a frenzy, not unlike perhaps the ones we saw in the late 90s, early 2000s. And he wants to get his piece of the pie, and I don't blame him. He's more than welcome to do that. I would just appreciate it if the elected officials in Alberta would maybe hold their horses a little bit on declaring that this will be built, that this will happen, and raising people's expectations, because I really think they're setting them up for being disappointed here.
Well, O'Leary says that he's optioning the land already. He's talking to the Premier's office. There's no reason to believe that there couldn't be support behind this. Wise Kyle, who's being just the tiniest little bit crude in our Real Talk live chat powered by Park Power, says that if this was an NDP project, Max would be blowing his load. Is it your political persuasions, Max, that are standing in the way? Is this a gripe that you have with Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary?
I turn that around the other way. I would suggest that if this was an NDP project, all the serious business minds in the province, the National Post columnists would be calling this out for the obvious farce that it is. But because it's a conservative premier and it's a conservative businessman, they are taking their critical thinking hats off and putting their booster hats on. Look, I think that there is a good case to be made for data centers in Alberta. We have the advantage of cold weather, which makes them less expensive to operate here. They require less energy. Like, there is a good case to be building these big, massive data centers in colder weather places. But it's not going to happen in a province that is actively undermining the construction of clean electricity, which is what most of the vendors who are participating in these data centers want. They want clean electricity. They want zero emissions electricity, if not now, then very soon. And you see that in some of the recent procurements in the United States. We in Alberta, we're actively undermining wind and solar. We can barely keep our grid online as it is. How exactly are we going to add 40% of the current grid capacity in new data projects? Yes, this one is going to be theoretically, off the grid. It's going to be all powered by its own generation, and I guess it would offer additional electrons onto the grid. But building 7.5 gigawatts of electricity when we have a capacity of basically 20 gigawatts right now is a pretty big lift, and it's bigger than anyone seems to be willing to acknowledge here.
I think it's relevant to point out the Premier's tweet on this. This was sent on December 9th, just a couple of days ago, a short time ago. She says, "What a time to be an Albertan." At $70 billion, this proposed data center mega project set to be the largest investment in Alberta's history and the largest investment of its kind in the world. Says the Premier, the jobs, economic diversification, and wealth generated will benefit Albertans for generations. I'm excited, says Danielle Smith, to see this incredible project led by Kevin O'Leary coming to Wonder Valley, located in the municipal district of Greenview. That's about a half hour south of Grand Prairie. She says, with Alberta's low taxes, free market, abundant natural gas, and skilled labor force, we're positioned to be a world leader in AI data centers. That's a pretty bullish position that the Premier's taken on this. Do you think, with political conviction, you've sort of tabled a few objections here. You've talked about Alberta's grid. You've talked about all the reasons why it couldn't happen. But with political conviction and political will, is it possible that something like this could happen?
I mean, if they want to subsidize this to the extent that I suspect Mr. O'Leary is hoping for, then they can make anything happen. I mean, there's no shortage of business opportunities that you can create if the government is willing to backstop them. I think the question we have to ask ourselves is, why would we do that as taxpayers? Why would we backstop massive subsidies from the government to someone like Kevin O'Leary, who, let's be honest, does not have a track record here? If this was a serious company that has built other data centers around the world, that had a track record of putting these things in place, I would take this much, much, much more seriously. And there are other proposals that are already in the queue with the Alberta Electric System Operator that have not been so splashy and so sales oriented that I think have a much higher probability of coming to fruition. But again, if we're going to be a leader in this space, if we are going to be a place where big international companies come to build data centers, we have to have a reliable electric grid, and we have to have a grid that is clean and powered by clean energy. And right now we have neither one of those things. So, if the government wants to make this happen, and they clearly do, and it's a good thing, it's, job opportunities, new economic investment in parts of the province, where it's needed. Those are all good things, but they have to put the policies in place that serious investors will finally take seriously. And Kevin O'Leary is a great salesperson. He spins a wonderful tale. He presents himself as a master business person. But again, if you look at the reporting that the Globe and Mail has done, you look at the reporting that Maclean's has done in the past on his his investment funds, on the big deal with Mattel back in the day, his track record is wanting. And I don't think that we should be putting all our eggs into his AI-created basket here.
Okay, so let me ask you this. I mean, Kevin Leary attaching his name to this, or maybe it was his idea in the first place, who knows? But I think you could probably suggest that obviously it'll draw a whole lot more attention to the project than it would otherwise. I mean, the number $70 billion will get anybody's attention, but if it's Mr. Wonderful, if it's Kevin O'Leary, if it's the star of Shark Tank and Dragon's Den, people are going to pay attention. But I'll jump into our live chat in just a little bit. Not exactly flattering when it comes to Kevin O'Leary. Do you think maybe that his attachment to this project could harm it more than help it? In other words, if this was just some big, if this was just Google, for example, or if this was Amazon, or if this was one of the world's biggest companies talking about investing tens of billions of dollars into Alberta, you think it might have more of a chance of flying than if it was like a TV celebrity?
Is there a number higher than 100%? Yes. I mean, absolutely. If it was a serious, global company, global tech company that has needs for these sorts of data centers and does the work in terms of assessing opportunities before they talk, then I would be celebrating alongside the premier here. I would say this is a wonderful moment for Alberta, that we're diversifying the economy. We are clearly embracing the clean energy that these big tech companies want to be procuring. I think it would be a great success, but we're not seeing that. We're seeing the opposite. We're seeing somebody who has a record for overselling and under delivering, and that is not just me saying that. That is people in lawsuits. That is people in the report on business stories on him. That this is not a new opinion that has been circulated. He is very good at selling, not so good at delivering, and that's kind of the disconnect that I'm digging into here in my piece. If it was Google, man, hand me a set of pom-poms. I'll start cheering.
Okay, so, and by the way, people can read your piece at nationalobserver.com. You just hit publish on it just a very short time ago, just a couple of hours before you and I are talking. So let me ask you this then. Of all the compelling reasons, or let me say at least of all the reasons that could prompt people to get excited about this type of a thing, do you think, or could you see the big tech companies actually choosing Alberta as a jurisdiction for a project, maybe not exactly like this, but similar to this? I mean, does Alberta, step outside this story, step outside talking about Kevin O'Leary, step outside, no offense, Grand Prairie, obviously a beautiful part of the province, but let's just say Alberta in general. Shout out Grand Prairie. I see Mariah Braun in the chat, by the way, just a brilliant business person in Grand Prairie, video creator, filmmaker. She's in there saying this is just a letter of intent. She says, I'm not getting excited about a letter of intent. I'm going to wait until there's shovels in the ground. But could you see, of the compelling reasons that are put forward in this press release and in this announcement, Alberta being a destination more so than other jurisdictions in Canada for projects like this in future? Yeah,
more so certainly than Saskatchewan, Manitoba, maybe even Ontario, although Ontario has a good amount of clean electricity. I think the low tax environment is a big draw for these companies. There's no question that they are right about that. That if all else is equal between British Columbia and Alberta in terms of access to electrons, in terms of infrastructure, the corporate tax rate will be the thing that changes their minds, that makes the decision. The problem is that we don't have all the other pieces in place. We don't have the reliable, clean electricity that a lot of these data centers are going to require as table stakes for investment. And now, with what's happening in the United States, with Trump, he just announced yesterday any project over $1 billion is going to get fast-tracked through the regulatory system. I do think you're going to see a lot of those data centers staying in or being located closer to California, to where these tech companies operate, simply because of concerns around what he might do and what he can offer these companies that are building them. So, we have the tax environment. Credit to the UCP for that in terms of these investments. Now we need the energy and infrastructure environment. We need the clean electricity. We need the reliable electricity grid. And we don't have either one of those right now.
Do you think, like in your column, you assert that O'Leary's playing Alberta for a fool, a $70 billion fool. Does Alberta have, or do Albertans have something to lose here aside from getting excited and then being let down? Like, is there a word of caution that you would have for the government or for everyday Albertans aside from getting your hopes up and being let down? Does Alberta stand to lose something more tangible than that right now at this stage?
It's pie in the face, right? It makes us look unserious. It makes us look credulous. It makes the government look credulous, and maybe they're fine with that because, of course, they can set this up as we had secured this investment, and then the dastardly federal government did something, and Kevin O'Leary had to walk away from it. And it's all Justin Trudeau's fault. They can still play that card, and they'll probably keep playing it for at least a couple more years now. So, politically, there probably isn't any downside for them. Alberta, in terms of the way it looks in the world, and maybe its ability to attract other low carbon investment, it does start to look a little bit unserious, and maybe that has a knock on effect down the road. For me, it's more just a question of dignity. Let's keep our pants on here. Like the person in the chat said, it's a letter of intent. That is all. When the shovels are in the ground, when real money has been invested, when investors have stepped up and put their money into the project, then let's get excited. I'm all in then.
Okay, so where does this story go from here? What should people keep an eye on? Like at what point does this fizzle out? We see announcements all the time from governments, and sometimes it's companies showing big interest in coming here, and sometimes it's sort of incentives. Sometimes it's hospitals or schools being built that end up never getting built. But the public memory is short. Something tells me that the memory will not be short on this one when you've promised the biggest real estate development in the province's history, one of the biggest developments in the nation's history. Obviously, people are going to get excited. This is the type of thing that could be a real shot in the arm to the Alberta is Calling campaign. People see that this could mean thousands of construction jobs. They say it could mean 1,000 full-time jobs once the center's up and running. So what's the next thing to keep an eye on?
Shovels. You not literal shovels, but you need to see agreements with the provincial government. You need to see announcements about, customers or people who would invest in this project, stepping up, putting their names on pieces of paper, and proceeding towards actually putting those shovels in the ground. And I suspect that will take more time than some might think, and I suspect it probably won't happen at all. But that is what you need to watch for is not just sending out a press release and creating an AI video. Because let's be clear, for someone like Kevin O'Leary, this is a very good return on his investment. He, spent very little money on creating this video and maybe meeting with a few officials, and he gets all this free publicity about being, Mr. Wonderful, about creating this beautiful community. He gets, tons of news coverage. So already his ROI on this is positive. The question is are any real investors, any meaningful sort of stakeholders going to step up and put their money where his mouth is?
I want to hop into our Real Talk live chat powered by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider. How about this from Lauren, who I happen to know is a retired fire chief? This is an angle I hadn't thought of, and it's kind of a punch in the gut that this type of thing might interfere with significant investment in certain regions, but this is our reality. Lauren says, a huge project vulnerable to wildland fires? Hadn't really thought about that, but I guess if you're building in the middle of the boreal forest, that's something that you got to think about. Smurfy is wondering if Mr. Wonderful is going to take a percentage in perpetuity once his initial investment is paid off. Yttrium says this data center, by the way, earmuffs, kids, for these next few comments. Yttrium says this data center is AI garbage bullshit. I'm not going to edit these comments because they're kind of funny in the middle of December. Travis says Kevin O'Leary made his money from misrepresenting his books to the buyer of his company. He's a slimy fuck. Max, you touch on that a little bit in your National Observer piece. I think Kevin O'Leary obviously gets a lot of credit. His corporate deal was one of the things that really put him on the map. That big deal with the Learning Center, the Learning Channel. Remind me.
The Learning Company, right. and he sold it to Mattel, and this was in the late 90s when frothy deals were sort of par for the course. But from all the business reporting that I've seen, it helped do tremendous damage to Mattel. It was, I believe, ranked as one of the worst takeovers ever in a CNBC piece in 2009. So not widely viewed as a good deal for Mattel shareholders. Good for Kevin. but not good for the shareholders of the company that bought his company. And he has built this very impressive reputation as a television personality. But I think people have to remember that what you see on television is not always what you get. I understand that we are in a moment with Trump coming back to office where you can really convince people based on what you do on television that you are a good and serious business person. But the facts, as were reported out by some of the best business journalists in the country, don't really suggest the same for Mr. O'Leary.
Jim says, okay, so Alberta's got money for AI, but we got the lowest per student funding K-12 in the country. Got it. Jim, I would say you make a good point about per student funding, but Alberta should be prepared to step up and invest in AI, right, Max? Like, this is not an indictment of spending on AI. There is a bright future. I heard a compelling presentation at an event I hosted about a month ago, hosted by BOMA, called the Brokers Forum, where a couple of commercial real estate experts were talking about the future that they could see for data centers in Alberta. They cited some of the exact same things that you did, and I was sold. I was convinced. Like, this isn't something that Albertans, generally speaking, the premise of investing in AI and tech should laugh off. I want to make sure that we make that clear.
No, not a bit. I think data centers are going to be big business as we are using more and more data, especially with AI. I think the AI thing is overplayed a bit, but it is clearly a big deal. You see every major tech company really pushing into this space. They think it has tons of potential. I think Google came out the other day with a new chip that is a supercomputing chip that I get some ridiculous numbers associated with it, but it could be a great leap forward in terms of computing power. So this is the way, this is the future, and we should want our piece of the pie. And I congratulate and celebrate the Alberta government for wanting to diversify the economy like this. Where I get nervous is when it looks like they see it as an opportunity to sell more natural gas. Because that is what this looks like. They're talking about how this region has a bunch of stranded natural gas assets, and those can be put to work in powering this data center. My understanding of the clients, the customers of these data centers, is that they do not want natural gas to be powering these over anything more than the near term. They want these to be clean electrons. They want them to be cleanly powered. And I don't see any plan in place for that to be happening in that part of the province, which is ironic because there's great wind assets up there in BC. There's obviously BC's hydro. We could tie those in. Then we could be cooking with some gas. But those aren't the things that the government is talking about. They're talking more about burning more natural gas and creating more demand for Alberta natural gas.
Super Chat Ken says, yeah, Alberta free market, unless you're a landowner that wants to put a solar farm on your land, then no, your land was category 2 in 1990, so you got to farm it. Sorry. Tracy says, subsidized by taxpayers at the disadvantage of other existing firms. Cactus Sheriff says the rich didn't get rich by investing in projects that benefit the masses. Steve wonders, is it just me, or does this scheme recall a 90s Simpsons episode? Monorail. Alberta Girl says this is not economically feasible and clearly a scam. And then, of course, the entire live chat is chiming in with their own monorails. Erica's wondering, why does this always have to be one or the other? Like, isn't there room for this project as well as other renewable energy projects? Max, what do you think?
Well, I think they work in tandem. And that's sort of the point I'm making, is that if you're a provincial government that believes that these sorts of data centers represent a major opportunity for Alberta, you can't be going out and kneecapping your renewable energy sector. Those two things cannot work together. It is not compatible. So if you believe that data centers are a great investment opportunity, then you have to be talking to BC about building more interties with them. You have to be talking about building more wind, more solar, batteries, all of it. Geothermal, we have wonderful geothermal assets here, and those would be used at this project. That does mention geothermal, but we need to be putting much more of a boldface underline underneath the geothermal part of this project. And credit to the Alberta government. They did announce recently, I feel like I'm giving a lot of credit to the Alberta government.
This is good. We're being objective. We're being open-minded and balanced. This is a positive,
exactly.
Max. Yeah.
Exactly. They announced a funding for a new drilling excellence center, and part of that is going to be studying geothermal. And, we have companies that have come right out of Calgary that are leaders globally in geothermal. So let's push all in on that if we want to make data centers a big deal in Alberta. Until I see those two pieces come together, I'm not really buying it.
All right. Alberta Ganger says, I really hope this project does go through. It'd be great for the MD of Greenview and Grand Prairie. Alberta Ganger, I do agree with you. It would be obviously huge. Alberta Rancher says there's just one thing missing, his $70 billion tax break and, of course, the taxpayer loan. Justin says Kevin O'Leary is a kiss of death for a company. If I was on Shark Tank, I'd say no to anything he's involved in. Tracy, who is Tracy, sorry if I get it wrong, I believe a career counselor or something along those lines, headhunter maybe. Tracy says Alberta has worked and is working with Google and Microsoft and, of course, Amazon as well, right? Says millions of dollars. My firm has placed dozens of folks with training and employment opportunities. I mean, kind of a mixed bag here, but I think generally speaking, Acute Awareness says it doesn't mean anything. Says this is notable that Trump says he'll waive any environmental regulations if you give a high enough amount of money, which is also an interesting point. Les is wondering how many tech experts and scientists want to go live in Grand Prairie. Bit of a swipe at Grand Prairie. I did see somebody earlier asking, where's the snow in the video? It could maybe be a bit of a harsh climate, but...
I've sold monorails to Brockway, Ogdenville, and North Haverbrook, and by gum, it put them on the map.
But we've had Grand Prairie's mayor, Jackie Clayton, on this show, and I love how she operates. She's got a huge passion for her community, and she believes that there's a ton of room for economic growth and population growth in that region. I think that there is a lot of untapped potential. Have you seen, I mean, the Silicon Valley, there's probably some reason why it's in beautiful Northern California. Yeah. Do you think that Alberta faces some disadvantages as well? We talk a lot about the advantages, the Alberta advantages. You think companies that have an opportunity to pay way lower taxes and offer their employees way lower cost of living would also have to convince the most skilled workforce that they're going to have to scrape their windshields in the morning and their fingers are going to hurt if they don't wear gloves when they drive to work?
Yeah, that's a huge problem that this thing glosses over. You see the video and there's all these people in suits, doing deals and innovating. And it's a little different when you're asking them to drive, half an hour outside of San Francisco versus half an hour outside of Grand Prairie. It is just a tougher sell, right? Especially if you're a young tech worker who, can pick and choose where they want to work in the world. Do they want to work in Texas, which also has low taxes and warm weather? Do they want to work in California, which does not have low taxes, but, has all the California things you love? Or do they want to live in northwestern Alberta? Like, it is a tougher sell, and it would require these firms probably to pay them much more money, which diminishes the sort of competitive advantages that the sort of headline corporate tax offers. So it's a lot more complicated than Mr. Wonderful is pretending here. But that is what you do as a salesperson, is you accentuate the positive and you ignore the negative. And hope that people buy in on your vision. Just like, if you're selling a monorail in Brockton and Ogdenville, you don't talk about the downsides. You talk about the upsides, right? The monorail is going to be amazing. Everyone's going to get a job.
You guys and your references, your deep pulls. I love it.
I love that episode. My favorite part is
one of the best.
When Lisa says, why build a monorail in a small town with a centralized population around a town center? And he leans in and he's like, I can answer that question for you, but you and I would be the only ones here who would understand the answer. And that includes your teacher.
Jeez. I want to give a shout out to Bricks86 in our Real Talk live chat powered by Park Power, because Bricks86 brings up a good point. Obviously, the former Prime Minister Stephen Harper named chair of the board of AIMCO, the Alberta Investment Management Corporation. Bricks says, of course, Stephen Harper will invest our money into this project as he's now completely plugged into the deep state intelligence agencies. I didn't really think about AIMCO's involvement of this, but this is the exact type of thing that could materialize as a result, isn't it?
Absolutely. AIMCO, if we have an Alberta pension plan, then it could be, the Alberta pension funds that have been repatriated that are invested here. There are a lot of ways that the Alberta taxpayer could be subsidizing or supporting this project. And I think, to circle back, before people get too excited, they need to see the details. They need to see the fine print. What exactly are we offering here? We don't know.
Yeah, we're talking to Max Fawcett. If you're just joining us, live streaming across 7 different platforms presented by California Closets. Max, we're going to treat this as a bit of a year-ender with you, if that's cool. We've asked if we can hang out with you for the entire show, quite frankly. You can read Max's piece at nationalobserver.com. Encourage you to subscribe there. Support independent, fact-check, long-form, deep-dive media like Canada's National Observer, where Max is the lead columnist. When we come back, I want to ask you about the wild story of Luigi Mangione. Perhaps nobody off the Eastern Seaboard knew this guy's name. Now everybody does, after he allegedly gunned down UnitedHealth's CEO Brian Thompson just a few days ago, now in custody, charged, by the way, by police in New York with first-degree murder. He's fighting extradition back to that state. I want to ask you about Trump calling our Prime Minister Governor Trudeau of the 51st State of the Union. I want to ask about a big tobacco settlement, one that we discussed on our December 10th episode of the show, Syria, and a whole lot more with Max Fawcett coming up in just a minute. But first, I want to talk to you about what's happening right now with the team at CSU 52. This is Civic Service Union 52. Thousands of public sector workers in Alberta's capital city of Edmonton. They're urging you to basically influence your city councilor. The elected officials that are deciding on Edmonton's budget and that are making the decisions, the smart decisions, they hope, budgeting for things that matter. These are the folks that are working the counters at rec centers and libraries, the folks that are answering 311 and 911 calls. These are the folks that are helping out with accessible transit like DATS and issuing city permits. They're pointing out that Edmonton's population set to boom over the next 10 years, and they want to make sure that this city continues to function in a way that you would expect your tax dollars at work being spent wisely. They're trying to eliminate misguided projects and wasteful spending. That's kind of the theme today, isn't it? You can learn more about their campaign, Budget for the Things That Matter, at edmontonforeveryone.ca. If you're looking to take a bit of a load off this holiday season when it comes to what you're going to be feeding your family and friends, the special guests that are joining you at home, I want to turn your attention to Acapella Catering at acapellacatering.com. They've been serving Edmonton for nearly 35 years and counting. Locally owned and operated, Acapella Catering is Edmonton's premier wedding, corporate, and major event caterers. Holiday season is in full swing. Bring in a catered holiday lunch for the office for as little as $15.75 per person, or let Acapella do all the heavy lifting and host the office to a hot turkey lunch with all the fixins for as little as $28.50 per person. Plus, if you're entertaining at home, they've got their award-winning holiday take and bake dinners, a full turkey dinner for 4 to 6 people on the table in 30 minutes. You know, some Edmontonians, plant-based households, are opting for the everything but the bird menu, just the sides. You can learn more details or place your order today at acapellacatering.com. You know, we talk a lot about new opportunities in the new year. UCAN Youth Services is in the business of creating new opportunities for vulnerable young adults aged 18 to 25. They've got a number of different programs that are taking young people out of at-risk lifestyles and getting them back into education or into employment opportunities. They have a number of different programs, including their Verto project, their Road to Work program, in partnership with industry and other employers. You can learn more about what UCAN's doing, and if you are an employer hiring entry-level positions, we urge you to consider reaching out and partnering with UCAN Youth Services. Max Fawcett, our guest, lead columnist at Canada's National Observer. Max, this is a story that I commented on yesterday, and probably the element that's just, I guess, leaving me baffled is the public response to a cold-blooded murder of UnitedHealth CEO Brian Thompson, who was on his way to a hotel, walking to a hotel to speak at an investors conference, when an armed assailant jumped out and basically gunned him down, shooting him in the back and killing him. A large manhunt, obviously a nationwide manhunt, ensued, and Luigi Mangione, from a prominent and affluent family, was arrested days later in a McDonald's in Pennsylvania, now facing first-degree murder charges. The story has garnered worldwide attention, and kind of the theme, if I had to sum it up, is that folks treating the alleged killer as kind of a Robin Hood. It obviously says a lot about where Americans are at with their perspectives on healthcare, equitable healthcare, health insurance, and the like. But what are you making of this, quite frankly, bizarre story?
There's a lot of weird parts of it. It does speak, I think, to the American psyche right now that, you have people, prominent people even, who are celebrating it almost, or who are, treating it as he got what he deserved, and it's just there's a kind of nihilism there that is kind of depressing on some level. As terrible a person as he might have been, he still had a family. I think he had kids, and anytime someone gets murdered in cold daylight, that's not a good sign. That's something that you would think of in a Batman movie, not in the world that we live in. But also, I think America is long overdue for a real conversation about their healthcare system and about the role that these insurance companies play in it. It sounds like this guy, had seen his mother suffer with the insurance companies. He, had a similar back condition, I guess, and was worried that he was going to suffer, in the same way that she had. And there is sort of a perverse element in the American healthcare system where, these insurance companies and their profits depend on denying people coverage, right? They depend in large part on not paying out claims. And that's not a good way to set up a system, because you have all sorts of perverse incentives that have manifested in any number of terrible ways in people's lives. So it would be nice if the conversation could kind of orient around that. Instead, because it's America, it's more of a celebrity thing. And, I just finished watching the TV series about the Menendez brothers. And this really reminds me of that treatment. I guarantee you there are already, Hollywood producers, screenwriters who are licking their chops here about this guy, this character. He is a made for Hollywood kind of person. Mm-hmm. And I think we are going to see it play out far more, on the screen in that respect than we are in a substantial and substantive conversation about how should we deliver and how should Americans be delivering healthcare most effectively and humanely.
It's okay to call him a kid too. I think, 26, 27 years old, and just the way this happened, I don't know what he was thinking, because he knew this was a big corporation, super powerful. He thought it was evil. You kill a CEO, Max, Ryan, you guys know, there's already someone in his spot today. Nothing has changed. This company is going to continue to make billions and billions of dollars. And you are right. They have fucked tons of people over. But murdering someone in broad daylight on the street is not going to change the day-to-day activities of this corporation. Today, there's already someone who got bumped up the ladder, and things are business as usual.
Well, you and I were chatting. Let me reference Noob Try Again, who's in our live chat right now, says this is not the way it should have been resolved with a murdered CEO. That said, says Noob, he definitely had a lot of blood and death on his hands. The CEO did.
100%.
Says that company had one of the highest denial rates. Johnny, you and I were talking about this after the show yesterday, because Max, I was a bit taken aback by where our live chat was landing on this. Like, it wasn't even 50-50. Like, I don't know, it felt like 80-20 cheering on the shooter yesterday. Sorry, Real Talkers, if you feel I'm being unfair, but anecdotally, that's what it looked like to me. But Johnny, we were kind of sorting it out. We chat about the shows after we wrap our recording. Yeah. And you kind of made an interesting point about who you thought it kind of actually is culpable, or where the heat should land on this. You remember that conversation we had?
Yeah, I think the heat should land on government and, people sitting, because we're talking about the states, the Senate, and if we're talking about now President Biden, Trump, these are the people who need to put their feet on the neck of these people. And like I just said, killing someone and having another, the CFO or whoever moved up the ladder and take over literally the day this guy was murdered, and business as usual. I mean, you would have done a lot better to wait a bit. This guy was already being investigated. They were double the amount of claims of the next highest money-making, healthcare company in the States. It only would have been a matter of time until this guy was sitting in a prison cell himself. And that would have been a lot bigger of a statement than murdering him on the street. Would be that he went to jail, things changed, That's what we want to see. I know that's what the assailant wanted to see. I know that's what Luigi wanted to see. I think that's what everybody wanted to see, but I don't think any of that's going to happen now.
I don't know if I share your optimism that he would have been in jail. I think
he was being
United
watched.
States,
The SEC,
let me just say, though, generally speaking, I mean, Max, I think we can count on one hand. I'm being selective probably in my memory, but I think of like Bernie Madoff. I think you can count on one hand the white-collar criminals that wind up behind bars. But do you think Johnny has a point, like with regards to maybe not culpability, but what role do you think government, what role do you think governors and senators and the House of Representatives, the President of the United States play? I don't see, quite frankly, not to get anybody's hopes up, I don't see Donald Trump stepping in and stopping health insurance companies from driving a healthy bottom line. Do you?
No, there's no chance of that. Yeah, I mean, I agree that this is a government problem to solve. It is up to government to properly regulate certain aspects of the economy, and you can't blame corporate actors for behaving exactly the way they're always going to behave. They're going to maximize their profits. And in a healthcare system where insurance companies play a big role, the way you maximize your profits is either by increasing your customer base or reducing the claims you pay out. So, you can't blame the scorpion for stinging the frog. The thing that I think about here, though, is two things. Number one, it's sort of a reflection of our culture where, in some respects, I think we all are player one in our little games. We all imagine that we're the heroes of our own story. And so for Luigi, resolving this through writing letters to his congresspeople or senator or voting in an election, it's not direct enough. It's not heroic enough. He needed to take the mantle of action into his own hands, and that's what he did. And I'm sure that will play out in the TV and movie treatments of what happened here. It's also, I think especially true of kids like him who grew up in rich families, that they perhaps struggle for meaning. They struggle for a role in the world, and stuff like this, I think maybe follows a little more naturally to children of privilege. I mean, again, the Menendez brothers, there is a reason why this is sort of disproportionately located in that demographic. The other thing I think of is, to Johnny's point about putting the boot on the neck, there's a reason why Donald Trump won the election, and it's because people were frustrated and he echoed their frustration, right? People are really frustrated in America right now, as they are in Canada. And I think the mistake that Democrats made and that liberals are making here is their response to the frustration is to say, well, you're not right to be frustrated, or your frustration is incorrect, or your frustration will be resolved shortly, rather than saying, yeah, you're damn right to be frustrated, and I'm going to do something about it. And that's what Trump did, and it's, I think, one of the reasons why he won.
Mm-hmm. We've got some fascinating insights, which I sure appreciate on our live chat powered by Park Power, including one kind of a seasonal one, if you will, from 80s Fanify, who says, isn't this the entire point of A Christmas Carol? Scaring the wealthy into caring. Okay, interesting. Tracy wonders, though, what does this open the door to, though? Doctors and nurses that participate in MAID? Your boss who doesn't give you a raise but takes one themselves? Someone will use this as an argument. Duke Luke says, I doubt that he would have ever been, the CEO would have ever been sitting in a prison cell. Vamp Fashion says, did anybody else notice the CEO and 3 other execs dumped $110 million into stock in stock 2 weeks ago as an antitrust investigation launched? Mm-hmm. Johnny, what you're talking about, says it could be irate investors, says this may not be health related at all.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I know it's pie in the sky to think every CEO will go to jail. I know Madoff's like the outlier, but the SEC was looking very hard at these guys because of what Vamp Fashion just said. Yeah. They were dumping stock, they were manipulating stuff, and I would have much rather see this guy rot in a prison cell, see the entire, a huge audit of the company and see some changes. And I know, again, this is wishful thinking, but that's the kind of change that I know Luigi deep down wanted. And I just don't think murdering someone it's not going to do anything except increase security for CEOs. And I just saw an article this morning on it talking about how much Elon Musk, the CEO of Google, the CEO of Amazon, how much they already spend on security and how they're probably going to you're never going to see these people. They're going to be surrounded by bodyguards and,
I don't blame them. I mean, the fact that Donald Trump survived 2 assassination attempts, One real one. Everybody always says two. I mean, there was one. Max is for the podcast. Max is
put his finger.
Hey, listen, I kind of caught myself, didn't I? Halfway through the sentence, there was a gun. There was someone holding a gun that was arrested on a golf course near where Trump was. It's pretty unusual to have somebody with a gun on a golf course. Let's acknowledge, but Trump was shot in the head, shot in the ear. Nobody disputes that. All I'm saying is that this cannot be the new thing. Like whether or not you disagree or agree with Joe Biden or Donald Trump or Justin Trudeau or Pierre Poilievre or business leaders or whomever. I'm not going to start naming executives in Canada. I don't want to start putting the point being, the solution is not murder. I guess that's all I'm saying. But I do acknowledge that this is an indicator of where public temperature is at, and it is driving a conversation for sure.
Well, two things. First, if we're defining assassination attempts as being in the proximity of a gun in America,
okay,
people are getting assassinated assassination attempts every day. But to your other point, I think people, business leaders, politicians, people who are now paying for these big security details, maybe ought to be thinking about why this is happening and whether they can be doing things to lower the temperature, right? Rather than sort of withdrawing into their ever more highly protected and secured cocoons, maybe they need to lead a conversation about, well, we need to invest more in the social safety net. We need to invest more in mental health. We need to be more open in supporting gun control, and especially in the United States, so that people do not have this toxic cocktail of anger and access to firearms to solve their problems, right? I do think that certainly, we should be calling out these sorts of acts wherever and whenever they happen, but we should also be thinking about why they're happening.
Yeah. Linda in the live chat says, I would say that he did accomplish something. She's talking about the alleged shooter. The shooter, whether or not that was Luigi, we'll find out. I mean, it sure looks like they've got Luigi's lawyer, by the way, Mr. Mangione's lawyer says that he has yet to see any compelling evidence. That's his argument. They're fighting extradition back to New York as we speak. But Linda says he did accomplish something, right? Nothing will change in that corporation, but people are talking about it, aren't we? And like, Linda, you're not wrong. And I don't mean to put you in an unfair position, Linda, but also, Max, you probably heard about this horrific cold-blooded murder of a security guard in the city of Edmonton, our home city, just a few days ago. The guy pushed downstairs and shot in the back. I mean, just by a career criminal, a dangerous, not an officially a dangerous offender, but in my estimation, a dangerous offender. If you've been charged more than 30 times with violent crimes, if you've been shoving women into trunks of cars at gunpoint, like you're not up for the key to the city. But like, people are talking about how there's a deplorable lack of training for security guards, this, that, and the other. But also that doesn't mean, and Linda, I'm not saying you're saying this, but it doesn't mean that like the security guard's death, like, well, it accomplished something because now we're talking about it, right? Like, this is still a guy that was like shot in the back and murdered. That's my only point, is it just seems weird for me. There's all these businesses, you've seen, it's not a meme, but it's kind of like a trend. It's like a viral trend in the States. All these businesses, like countless businesses, are posting like funny posts about like Luigi Mangione, their employee who was like hey, thank you, Luigi, for working a 12-hour shift at the time when the shooting occurred. You were with us. You were with us in Queens from 6 to 6, and like, thank you for your commitment. They're putting out like funny quasi alibis for the shooter, and people are loving it. People are laughing. It's just weird. I don't ever want that to be a normal thing, at least not in my world. I'm never going to be able to wrap my mind around that being normal. I guess that's my only point.
Yeah, I agree. But I think it speaks to the temperature
sure does.
In America right now.
Sure does.
And again, to sort of bring this back to advice for Democrats. They have gotten way too comfortable with corporations, with corporate power, with Wall Street, and they are way disconnected from, I think, the average American voter on this stuff. And that the funny videos about Luigi, I think, speak to the fact that there is a deep-seated frustration with the economic system there, the way it rewards the winners, punishes the losers, the way that corporate executives don't get sent to prison for their misdeeds. And if they're going to recalibrate going into the next election, if they do have another election there, it should be around, more of an Elizabeth Warren sort of approach to putting corporations on the other end of their kind of focus, and putting the American consumer, the American individual first, but saying like, we have to break up these big corporations, we have to reduce corporate power, and ensure that they're held accountable when they break the law. And they've gotten soft on that over the last little while.
Here's an example. This is from a company called J Street Video Games. I don't know if you saw this one, Johnny. I don't know if you saw this, but for the podcast listeners, they've got Mr. Mangione photoshopped into an image shot behind the counter of J Street Video Games. And this is their post just from the other day, one day ago. What a busy month it's been, says the post. Special thanks to Luigi Mangione for your help on December 4th from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. What a long shift to never leave our site once, to not even use the bathroom, but customers really enjoyed your catchphrase, I'll never go to New York City, and the only thing I hate more than hoods on jackets is guns. Very weird thing to say constantly all day, but also very funny. Put a shirt on, you goof. Leave us and Luigi a 5-star Google review. And the post has gone absolutely viral. So it's just, I don't know. I imagine somebody in California posting that about the Menendez brothers back in the day. I mean, the internet didn't exactly exist like it does now. But
in fairness, like the Menendez brothers in their first trial, they had hundreds, dozens of women greeting them at the court every day and writing love letters to them and holding signs saying how much they love. Like, this is a not entirely unusual phenomenon, especially with good-looking young men who are accused of crimes. And I think, this guy, he has all the online juice right now. And if you're a little video game company somewhere, or a little video game store, you're going to try to capture your little cupful of that online juice. That's sort of the online culture we've created, for better and for worse.
Yeah, I guess. We're talking to Max Fawcett. Max, don't go anywhere. When we come back, I want to ask you about Trump declaring our prime minister to be the governor of the 51st state of the union. Plus, I want to ask you on something a little more serious, what's happening in Syria, and more with Max Fawcett, lead columnist. This is our year-ender with Max from Canada's National Observer. Of course, it is Wednesday, which means that our friends at Tourism Jasper have a special feature for you. And heading into the official holiday season, this one is especially timely. It's MyJasper Memories, proudly presented by Tourism Jasper. And there's a whole lot going on in December out in Jasper National Park. Our family's heading out there, and we can't wait to get out there. Number one, just because of the natural beauty, the beautiful time of year to be out in the mountains, the crown jewel, as far as I'm concerned, of Canada's national parks, but also to infuse a little dough into these businesses that have been through a lot, to say the least, over the past number of months. The holiday season is a very special one in Jasper, and it's made all the more magical by spending it among the mountains in the national park. So many amazing and unique activities like skiing. Johnny's showing us an incredible capture from Marmot Basin. They're seeing dumps of snow right now. They're wide open, brand new chair out there as well. Dog sledding and sleigh rides and snowshoeing and canyon tours and skating. There's nothing like ice skating. Did I ever tell you that our guy at the time, Wyatt, he's not little anymore, 18 months old, his very first skate was out on Lake Mildred, out in Jasper, the very first time he put on skates. Of course, Moline Canyon, just a stunning area to visit as well. Not to mention oodles of deals right now that your wallet's going to love. It's not hard to see why their chilliest season is often delivering the warmest Jasper Memories. What a shot of Pyramid Mountain there. Beautiful from Pyramid Lake Lodge. You can also indulge in amazing food with all of their holiday specials menus. And of course, right now, brand new, I'm excited to tell you about the Jasper Pony Express. Check this out. We'll link to it in the show notes on the pod and on YouTube. This is an opportunity to experience the magic of winter nights in Jasper with complimentary wagon rides. You can cozy up in a charming horse-drawn wagon as you're carried away from your hotel to enjoy a delicious dinner at a local restaurant or explore the town's shops. The Jasper Pony Express is available nightly, Thursday to Sunday, from December 12th, kicks off tomorrow, through to the end of March 31st. If I'm going to make a personal recommendation, do not tell your family about this. Just book it. Let them know there's a dinner reservation.
Santa got us a pony
But they've got to
ride.
be ready. And why not walk out? Why not walk out of your accommodations, your hotel, to a horse-drawn carriage? How cool would that be? That's the Pony Express in beautiful Jasper, the Jasper Pony Express, one of the brand new offerings, one of many. You can learn more and get your own Jasper holiday getaway started today by learning more, booking at jasper.ca. Travel. My Jasper Memories is proudly presented weekly on Real Talk by our good friends at Tourism Jasper. Max Fawcett, our guest. Max, I think everybody knows by now that Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau traveled in what appeared to be kind of a secret mission. At least it wasn't announced by the PMO. It wasn't on his itinerary, but he headed down to Florida with some senior cabinet ministers to meet with Trump and some senior members of the president-elect's team. And at the dinner, and reportedly there was some nervous laughter from the Prime Minister, and then some messaging after, including on Truth Social. The Prime Minister referred to him as Governor Trudeau of the 51st State of the Union. It was kind of exacerbated, or at least some fuel added to the fire, when President-elect Trump posted a photo of him in front of the Matterhorn of all mountains, but with the message, "Oh, Canada," and a Canadian flag flying, and it's got some people, I don't think seriously, but talking about whether or not Canada would be the 51st state. Now, I think it's a joke, but I do want to put it in front of you to ask for your take on this assertion.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a joke. I'm sure it's, it's just the way that Trump bullies people. But I think we should be mindful of the fact that it sets a tone. Every time, a high-profile American, whether it's the president or whether it's, Mark Andreessen, who's a big tech CEO, makes jokes about how we're going to become a 51st state and how we will, welcome them as liberators, it undermines our sovereignty. It undermines our standing. And as much as you may dislike the Prime Minister, as much as you may dislike policies that he's implemented, you kind of have a responsibility as a Canadian to stand shoulder to shoulder against that. And there are some people out there who are rooting for this, who think it's funny, who think it's it's Trudeau's fault, and if only we had a stronger PM, they wouldn't do that. I would remind them that it's been reported by Politico that J.D. Vance, the incoming vice president, said he's not sure that it's any better to have, quote, Mitt Romney with a French accent, referring to Pierre Poilievre. So, I don't think anyone in this administration really takes Canada seriously or respects anyone in this country. And we should all be thinking long and hard about what that means. Part of it is we have taken for granted that America will never mess with us, that they will never take advantage of us. And that has been, I think, a luxury we can no longer afford. We need to be investing more in our own security, in our own independence, in our own economic alternatives, whatever they might be. And, again, this isn't a partisan issue. The current government has not met the 2% of GDP defense spending target that NATO sets out. Neither did the previous one under Stephen Harper. We have been riding this sort of free train for quite a long time. And Trump has this gift. I don't know if it's a gift or what, but this ability to really show where things stand, show people's true hand. And he's showing us how vulnerable we are. And I think we have to take that seriously.
Interesting piece by Stephanie Levitz in the Globe and Mail. I'm not sure if you read it, but she basically says that Pierre Poilievre's political playbook is being tested by Donald Trump's victory. I know a lot of people are calling for Mr. Poilievre to head down south and meet with Trump. I can see reasons why they're pushing for that. I can see reasons why that's unrealistic, at least right now. Trump's not inaugurated yet. Poilievre is still leader of the opposition, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But writes Ms. Levitz in the Globe and Mail, after 2 years of Mr. Poilievre pushing Prime Minister Trudeau over housing and other affordability issues, and with the Conservatives well ahead in the polls, the U.S. president-elect, Donald Trump, obviously, is changing the stakes. She's quoting Ginny Roth, who ran Mr. Poilievre's comms during his leadership bid a couple of years ago, a partner at Crestview Strategy, says, "I don't think that Donald Trump is a variable that you can wrest control of." And that leaves, writes Ms. Levitz, Mr. Poilievre facing a new political reality. He's no longer in control of the narrative. How do you think that Donald Trump's inauguration on the 20th of January and the time in between and following is going to influence Mr. Poilievre's messaging to Canadians over the next number of months?
I think it's a really insightful piece, and I think that's absolutely correct. He has been masterful so far at controlling the narrative, at kind of making the Liberals jump in terms of housing or the carbon tax or affordability issues. The whole GST rebate or GST exemption fiasco that we're dealing with right now is a response to his framing. It's a response to his constant pounding on quality of affordability issues that our Canadians are facing. And she's right. This changes the frame. It is now almost entirely going to be about Canada's survival, Canada's sort of existential negotiations with the United States, with Donald Trump. And, if Poilievre is out there still railing on about the carbon tax, it's going to make him look tone deaf. It's going to make him look like he really cannot see the forest for the trees. I don't think that means that Trudeau and the Liberals are going to win the next election, because I think they are so far gone at this point. Canadians really do want something different. But I do think if they put someone new in the window, if Trudeau decides to step aside over Christmas and they put Mark Carney or even Dominic LeBlanc in there, someone like that, it may give Canadians a different alternative to think about, and they may not want a prime minister who is sort of inclined to being whiny and sort of doesn't want to stand with the rest of the country against this new threat. And if I was Poilievre's team, and goodness knows I'm not, but if I was helping them, I would suggest that he needs to kind of dial it back a little bit right now and be a little more careful with his rhetoric, because if the Americans carry through with the threat of 20% tariffs, who knows, maybe they carry through with the 51st state stuff. Again, talking about a carbon tax is going to make you seem like you are completely out of touch.
We've got a flamethrower submission coming up on Friday, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park from a fellow. I won't spoil it. I'll leave it for the flamethrower, but this guy's absolutely livid that Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith laughed at Trump's assertion about the 51st state. She said she thought it was hilarious. I don't know. I mean, I think, I can see... this is a dangerous thing to say in 2024. I can see both sides of this one, Max, where I can see that it's Trump kind of ribbing the prime minister, but also I think that it's pretty significant, kind of like big dogging the head of state for another G7 nation. Is kind of like a weird move, but it's also a very Trump thing to do. I see Vamp Fashions in our live chat saying it would be a beautiful thing for Danielle Smith to invite both Donald Trump and Pierre Poilievre for a summit before
Sky
the
Palace.
inauguration.
Sky Palace.
You could host him at the Sky Palace.
Sky Palace Alberta whiskey mixer.
Yeah, but here's the thing. It's kind of interesting to see certain premiers looking to get ahead. I mean, Danielle Smith, I saw post a photo just the other day of her meeting with Chrystia Nome. And I mean, there's sort of like big things happening. It's kind of interesting to see certain jurisdictions, I'm talking provinces, not countries, look to deal with Donald Trump. Doug Ford had his own comments on Mexico and trade and the agreement and what Canada could do with the United States excluding Mexico. Are you surprised by this? Is this political leaders globally responding to the kind of the unicorn factor of Donald Trump? What do you make of the efforts from Premier Smith and Ford and others?
So if I'm going to be charitable here, I think from Premier Smith's perspective, her view is probably that, Trump really dislikes Trudeau. And if she can kind of, rib Trudeau a little bit and make him look a little weaker and go into business for herself, that makes it more likely that Trump is going to like her and going to give her a hearing and give Alberta's interests a hearing. I think that's a bit naive. I don't think Trump gives a flying you-know-what about what any Canadian has to say to him. I think he only cares about what's best for America. And that is how any pitch to him has to be framed. And she is doing that, to some extent with the energy exports and, we're your biggest supplier of energy and we want to help you build Keystone XL. I think that misses his longer game, which is I don't think he wants to be importing any Canadian oil. I think that is his view. It is sort of an unsophisticated and unnuanced view. But I think if you don't take that seriously, you are going to get caught out. And I think it's only a matter of time before that happens to Premier Smith here. Credit to Doug Ford. I don't think the divide and conquer approach works with Mexico. And I think we've pissed Mexico off now, and that probably isn't going to help us going forward. But, he had a very funny joke or remark the other day. And I do think the way you deal with Trump is with returning his humor to him. And he said, well, I think if Trump is thinking about Justin Trudeau at midnight, because he was tweeting about Trudeau at midnight, that's a good sign for the relationship. And I thought that was funny because it kind of sticks it back to him. It's a bully bullying another bully. And that is the way I think you have to deal with him, is you can't roll over to him. If you roll over to a bully, it just invites them to take more liberties. You have to find a way to fight back. And obviously we can't fight back militarily. We can't really fight back economically. But there are ways that we can jab him. And I think that, Ford's comment there was a window into ways that we can push back. But it's not going to happen through surrender, and it's not going to happen through flattery. I can tell you that much.
Matt's in our live chat powered by Park Power says Trudeau needs to secure our border and stiffen immigration policies, or else we are all screwed. Matt's not wrong in the sense that Max's face just twists as he hears the comment. I'll hand the conch back to you in just a quick second, but obviously for reference, for background, the president elect Trump has said that these 25% tariffs will be imposed if the flow of fentanyl is not stopped across from Canada into the United States. Those are his words, his assertion. And if the border's not tightened up, there have been some steps taken by Ottawa, by the Trudeau Liberals in response to that. In your mind, is the response sufficient? And do you believe that Canada could take... Let me ask you, is the tariff thing a bluff? Is it very real? And if it is very real, what can Canada do about it?
I think the tariff thing is real. Mm-hmm. I think he genuinely believes that tariffs are a good form of economic policy. It's a way to raise revenue for the his government, that they can then return it. This is his thing, is he'll put tariffs on things and then sprinkle money to farmers or sprinkle money to impacted groups. And it sort of is a way of him becoming their patron, right? Rather than letting trade flow freely, he puts a tariff between trade and then gets to decide who gets the money. It's a way of increasing his power and forcing these groups to kind of genuflect to him. But I would just reject the premise of the idea that he's doing the tariffs because our border is leaky and unsecure. The flood of fentanyl coming from Canada to the United States is a tiny trickle. And by the way, most of it is being trafficked by Americans. It's Americans coming over the border and trafficking drugs back into America. The real problem with the border, if you ask me, is the volume of guns, illegal guns, that are flowing from America into Canada and ending up on our streets in Toronto and Montreal and various other places. So happy to have a conversation about stiffening the border, but the Americans have to pull up their pants and do their job too.
Well, we're talking to Max Fawcett. Max, hang tight. When we come back, I want to ask you about Justin Trudeau's GST holiday. It's apparently driven a wedge between Chrystia Freeland, the finance minister, and the prime minister's office. So we'll get into that story, whether or not you think that was good policy. Plus, we'll talk Syria. But first, I want to put Freeland Brothers on your radar. Number one, they have their December to Remember sandwich. This is a feature that they have available at participating stores, one of Mike's meals. You're not going to want to miss out on this one. Look at that. Turkey, cranberry, you name it, on their fresh-baked buns. Nobody beats the Freeland Brothers kitchen, whether you're dining in or taking out. And then, of course, Johnny, you and I have very much been enjoying these Satsuma oranges, these holiday oranges. I'm absolutely loving these things. I'm starting to wonder, who is that Violet, what's-her-face, out of Willy Wonka that ate all the blueberries? And am I thinking of the right character? She ate so many blueberries that she turned blue. If I turn orange tomorrow morning, you're going to know exactly why. These are the traditional Japanese orange variety. They're grown in California, so they're shipped less of a distance. They're easy to peel. They're seedless. They're bursting with flavor.
Bursting just like Violet Beauregard.
Oh, our resident pop culture expert. Nobody's quicker than Johnny Infamous. You can find Satsumas for a limited time at all 17 Freeland Brothers. Freeland Brothers is proudly Alberta grown and Alberta owned. Hey, so is California Closets. Alberta owned and doing better work than anybody else. As a matter of fact, nobody compares to the custom cabinetry, the custom closets, and the storage solutions designed and installed by California Closets. They have custom closet systems and solutions for the entire home, including your entryway, your mudroom, your stairway, your spare bedroom doubling as a home office, and your garage. Yeah, that's right, your garage. If you're looking for the perfect gift for that loved one that has everything but organizational ability, why not book them a free consultation, put it under the tree? You can do that today by visiting californiaclosets.ca. Oh, and hey, by the way, there are some government incentives that are still available, but not for long. If you're looking to put solar on your roof, this could be at home. We could be talking about on your farm, your ranch, your cottage, your office tower, whatever it is. Kubi Renewable Energy does it, and they'd love to talk to you about going green in 2025. You can get a free quote today, plus learn more about what's involved in a project, the design, the installation, and more by checking out their website at kubienergy.ca. So Justin Trudeau, in response to the affordability crisis in Canada, and to be honest, probably in response to plummeting polling, has introduced a GST holiday break. Everybody knows about it right now, including the regular listeners and tuners to Real Talk. It is Trudeau's tax holiday, and that means for the next couple of months on select items, retailers will not be collecting GST. Some folks are grateful it'll keep some money in their pocket. A lot of retailers that I'm hearing from, so it's anecdotal, but we are getting emails from retailers that are letting us know, Max, especially for the small businesses, that this is a huge pain in the ass. They're having to redo a lot of their software at the tills and everything else. Of course, the opposition is piling on it. This is one tax that Pierre Poilievre does not want to axe, and new reports suggest that the deputy PM, the finance minister, Chrystia Freeland, is actually pretty annoyed about this as well. What do you make of this story? I haven't had a chance to ask you about it.
Well, desperate times call for desperate measures, and this is about as desperate a thing as I've ever seen a government do. As I said earlier, they are, by doing this, confirming the framing that the Conservatives have been laying out for months now, which is that there is an affordability crisis, people are suffering, and reducing taxes is a good way to address that. You've basically just validated your opponent's key argument. Great job, folks. You're also in the process, as you suggested, and as I noted on social media when the announcement came down, like, isn't this going to totally cause havoc for small businesses in the country who have to now adjust their pricing, their software? It applies to this, it doesn't apply to that. It's this random grab bag of items, Christmas trees. Apparently they included Hanukkah bushes in it, which I'm not even sure Hanukkah bushes are a real thing. It's such a clusterfuck of a government that doesn't know what it stands for and doesn't know where it wants to go. And on some level, stuff like this is disqualifying. This is a sign that you should vote for someone else. And I understand why Chrystia Freeland is so frustrated by it, because apparently it was done without her department's say so. They just announced it and then said, okay, make it happen. And it makes her look like an idiot. It makes her look like she doesn't understand the file that she's in charge of. And it kind of goes to show that this government at this point is just trying anything to do anything to bump their numbers up, except for the most obvious thing of all, which is to change the player at the top of the ticket. Right? They are desperately trying to avoid doing the obvious thing. And at some point you would think the obvious thing is what they'll have to do.
Yeah, I mean, you get to the point where it could be too little too late. If there's going to be a change at the top, if there's going to be a legitimate leadership campaign, if there's going to be a legitimate amount of time for a new leader to have some runway to establish themselves as a change, as a new face, as a new Liberal Party, you're running it up against the clock. I mean, number one, I guess Jagmeet Singh, to a certain degree, holds a bit of power here, right? Obviously, they could vote non-confidence in this government and they could prompt an early election almost at any point, but they won't. You and I both know that. But even if that doesn't happen, we're talking about an election next fall in less than a year. That's not a lot of time for a new lead. I mean, you'd have to have, after the holidays, it's not happening before Christmas, you'd have to have Trudeau announce that he's leaving probably in early January to trigger leadership campaigns of whoever would step forward. You need to leave, I don't know how much runway, probably 5 to 8 weeks, wouldn't you say? I don't know, 6 weeks maybe for leadership campaigns to play out. And then all of a sudden you're into March, April, and then you have basically 6 months for a new leader to establish themselves. It's either now or never, right? And the Prime Minister's basically indicating, as he did on this show, coming up about 10 months ago, but I mean, a lot's happened between now and then, that he's not going anywhere. He's adamantly standing there, and it gets to the point where it's starting to become a little bit mind-boggling.
I would suggest that the opportunity, the moment for doing a switch and being able to win the next election is well behind us.
Yeah.
Maybe it was 6 months ago, maybe it was a year ago, but the point at which they could put someone else new in, change the face of the government and have a fighting chance in the next election, it's gone. But what they should be thinking about now is who can save the largest amount of electoral furniture, right? Do they want to be in opposition with 90 seats, or do they want to be in opposition with 20 seats? That is the question now. And I think if they stick it out with Trudeau to the bitter end, they are looking maybe not at a Kim Campbell Mulroney outcome in 93, but it could be the case where the NDP is the official opposition. And that is a very, very dangerous place for the federal Liberal Party. So that is how they should be thinking about it. How can we keep the NDP in third? How can we keep ourselves as the official opposition? And how can we put ourselves in position to live to fight in the next election? And I think, again, the best way forward there is by having a leadership race, picking someone new, and giving Canadians a real choice, because they've made it clear in poll after poll, in reaction after reaction to federal policies, they are not listening to this prime minister. He could come out with a cure to cancer and a perpetual motion machine, and they would say too little, too late. The problem is the only person who can get through to Justin Trudeau on this is Justin Trudeau.
Yeah. 100%. Max, I want to turn our attention to, easily the international news story that most people are following right now, and that is the fall of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. The remarkable video surfacing of prisoners being discovered in underground cisterns and horrific conditions. Obviously, his record, this dictator, is absolutely deplorable and awful. But I read an interesting piece in The Conversation by SFU professor James Horncastle on why he doesn't believe that the fall of Assad is likely to lead to peace in Syria. As a matter of fact, he believes it's unlikely to lead to peace in Syria. A lot of folks have expressed, concern around the Islamic influence of the rebels that have been successful, at least early, in what's being described as this civil war. It's prompted interesting military action and aggression from Israel. What are you focusing on in this story? What are some of the key points that you're paying close attention to?
I think, when we're in a world that we're in right now, where bad things are happening in a lot of different places, you take the good where you can get it. And absolutely, there's no question that we don't know what this is going to look like. We don't know what it's going to lead to. It probably won't lead to a pluralistic democracy, a pluralistic secular democracy. There aren't a lot of those in the Middle East. But Terry Glavin, who not always a champion of mine or am I a fan of his, but he has covered this conflict for a very long time in a very wise and thoughtful way. And he had I don't know if it was a column or just a post the other day, basically saying, take the win. This is a beautiful moment for Syrians. This is a beautiful moment for people who have resisted this regime for dozens, decades. It's a beautiful moment for anyone who wants to see Russia take one between the eyes. This was Russia and Iran's proxy state, one that they had propped up, one that I think a lot of people thought was not going to fall, and it fell. And it shows that, the pro-democracy protests and the pro-democracy movement in Iran perhaps will be victorious sooner than we think. Maybe one day a pro-democracy movement in Russia will be victorious. Democracy does not have to be in this kind of terminal spiral, and dictatorships do not have to be in the ascendancy forever. And so take the good news, celebrate with the Syrians in your life who are overjoyed by this news. I know where I grew up in Falls Creek, there's a few Syrian families that immigrated, and they are in tears about it. And they know that there are no guarantees about what comes next, but they know one thing: the Assad regime and the pardon my French, but the pieces of shit who were involved in it have either died or fled, and that is a good thing.
Max Fawcett is the lead columnist of Canada's National Observer and one of our absolute favorites because he shoots straight, doesn't mind curveballs. I'm trying to think. I should say
the baseball references because he's a baseball guy.
I was gonna, I was catching myself. It's so funny. It's like, Johnny, you and I have been a married couple for long enough at work that you finished my sentences. I was gonna use a few more baseball metaphors, and I realized I could have done better than shoot straight. Yeah. He doesn't mind him high and inside, and hits more home runs than average. All of this to say, Max, we sure appreciate your contributions to the show in 2024. We're looking forward to chatting with you again in 2025. Obviously, I want to put this out to Real Talkers that one of the cool ways that they can show their support and their appreciation to you is by subscribing to Canada's National Observer at nationalobserver.com. That's where you can read Max's opinion pieces on the regular. Of course, he's the lead columnist there, and make sure you give him a follow on X at Max Fawcett. Very happy holidays. What's that? Are you on? Oh, geez, really? Okay. Maybe I'm going to have to get off this. I had somebody yesterday ask me, kind of hold my feet to the fire and ask why we're not getting serious on Blue Sky.
We're on there. We just haven't started.
We're not. I'm not sold on it yet. But is that a real thing for you, Max, at this point, for real, honestly?
I'm in both places. I find the quality of conversation way better on Blue Sky.
Yeah.
There aren't as many opportunities to dunk on people, but that's kind of the whole point of Blue Sky.
How does how does it? How are there limited opportunities to dunk on people? Explain it to me. I don't even know.
So they have a feature where if someone, let's say you tweet something and then some massive account with, many, many followers, like let's say the Vice President of the United States decides to quote tweet you, on Blue Sky, you can just disconnect their tweet from your tweet, right? You just cut it, and then they can't drag you, they can't dunk you, people can't make your life an unpleasant mess for however long it takes. And the whole ecosystem is just wired to reward, I think, a more thoughtful conversation. And so I'm in both places because I like to hedge my bets, but I can tell you that my time spent on Blue Sky is a lot less stressful and a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah, and that feature is meant to it's for mental health, because they can still, Max, technically screenshot your Blue Sky tweet or whatever they call it and put that up and whatever. But at least you're not connected to it. You're not getting all these notifications for weeks and weeks of people who are giving you hate, right? Which I think I think it's good.
Okay. Well, here I am. This is the real me. I am on Blue Sky at Ryan Jesperson. I guess I'm following zero and I have zero posts, Johnny, but this is my real account. So Max, maybe with a little bit more compulsion, maybe I'll go ahead and maybe post my first, what do you call it?
Like we are doing it.
It's not
a
a tweet.
skeet. It's a skeet.
A skeet?
Yeah.
Like skeet shooting?
I think it's just a post. It's just a post.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I sound like
Little John yells that a lot in a song, and I don't think he's talking about discussion.
We love you, Max. Thanks for doing this, man. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
As always, and happy holidays, Merry Christmas to the Ryan Jesperson Real Talk family.
All right, you got it. That's Max Fawcett, lead columnist of Canada's National Observer. Real Talkers, do you think should we really be on Blue Sky? It just feels like it's
skeet.
It's one
to the
more
window.
thing. Oh, jeez. I love this from Ben Demon Hunter in our live chat. Says a good 90 minutes well spent this morning. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. We don't take it for granted as we wrap today's show, just to let you know that you give us your valuable time. Honestly, we know that every single minute counts. Every single one of us is so busy. And when you choose to hang out with us and talk about the issues that matter, the real life, real stuff, fills our hearts. It's why we do it. So thanks for that. You can always support us on Patreon. We have our exclusive Real Talk Zoom Patreon Christmas party coming up next Friday. And in the meantime, make sure you share our content, tell your friends, and subscribe to us on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson. Executive producer Josh Dunford. Technical producer John Hicks. General manager Katie Cook-Chivers. Account coordinator Lawrence Derlego. Human resources Lena Shepard. Website design Mike Johnston. Voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harman Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.